Okay, everybody, we are Esplanade on air, living the dream over here in the district. I'm your podcast pro, Jamie Taylor, and I'm here to share the journey of the Esplanade district. As the place comes to life, today I am joined by Nan Ellen East. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
So I'm excited to speak with you and hear about what you have to do with this beautiful building that we're sitting in, and how you sort of came to be involved with this project. So let's start with just who you are and where you're from.
Okay. Well, I'm Nan Ellen East, and I've always lived in Little Rock, except when I went to high school in Dallas and Fayetteville for school. And I'm married, have 3 children, and they're all grown up, and 2 of them are involved in the Esplanade. That would be Lee Butler Jackson and Edward Jackson. So I imagine you'll talk to them sometime. Mm-hmm. And maybe Tyndall at some point. He's my 3rd son. And their brother is Blake Jackson. And so I've gotten to know Blake very well. Let's see. About me, when I was in school, I was in architecture. And it was, I loved architecture. And so I graduated, and then I got married. I had my 3 children, and one of them lost his hearing. And as a baby, 14 months old. And that was a new learning curve for me. And so I had to learn a lot. I had to learn about speech, language, the whole history of deafness, technology. I learned all about technology, hearing devices, anything you can think of. I learned about it. Lots of conflicts, people really upset with each other. Are they going to use sign language? Are they going to talk? Are going to have a cochlear implant or not? Anyway, a whole lot of things that changed my life.
Wow, it sounds like it.
So I ended up being a volunteer in numerous charities that help people with hearing impairment or their families. And so that really became my mission for a while. So in the meanwhile, my family lived out in the woods. Before it was out in the woods. This is an apartment complex that we began, but actually it was my grandparents' playhouse.
Wow. And
so Haskell and Nan Dickinson would go out to this 14 acres and had a playhouse, and they play poker. They furnished it from furnishings from the Gleason Hotel, the Marion Hotel, old hotels that you don't even know about that were imploded when we learned the word implosion. Anyway, a long time ago. And we would go out, and I would be setting up chairs or, watching parties happen. And so I always thought that was neat. Well, then I married Jim Jackson, and we needed a place to live. And so my parents said, well, why don't you just go live there? So we lived there. So then my father told me one day as we were designing our house, since Jim Jackson and I were in architecture school together, we thought, this is cool. I had horses, it was just perfect. I had 3 little children, and my dad sends me a picture, and it has New Baptist Hospital going on 12th Street. And my dad said, oh, you will be moving, and we're going to do a feasibility study about what to do with this property, because you just can't live there and have a big hospital across the street because the property's value will change. So I began to hear about terminology used in development.
Yeah.
But I wasn't real thrilled about it because I had to move. But then we designed and built our house.
Well, and even with architecture being, it is related to real estate, but it's not like architecture is the thing you go after to make the money. That's the beauty of the project, right? Where that feasibility you learned about is what they were really kind of trying to figure out. What can we do with this property? And you're like,
right,
I want to live here.
That was the term, feasibility.
Yeah.
What's the best for the community and the best for our pockets too.
Right.
But so we did that, had a study, and we moved, and we built our first apartment complex. But I say we, and I'm just in the background. I'm the mom. I just know a little
with
bit
3
about
kids
it.
and learning about, at this point, are you learning about the deafness and going through that?
And yeah, I learned all about that, and I went to work for pay at a place called Disability Rights Arkansas.
Yeah.
So I directed that nonprofit for 27 years. So see, it sort of took me out of the field, and I was just going along in the background.
That is quite impressive, just for the record, that you say background, but you're raising 3 children. I have a 14-month-old and a 14-year-old at home, and I'm having a hard time. But then you're also directing a nonprofit, and I wouldn't say necessarily in the background, because you are, I'm sure, making decisions and having input along the way as being an architect through the project, right?
Well, sure.
Yeah, that's not the
because
background.
you can, you can read blueprints and all those kind of things. But really, I didn't have much to do with it. It ended up being my husband, who's Jim Jackson, who's now a partner here with the Esplanade, and our children.
Well, I guess that first one must have went well.
The first one went great. And so that was great. So then we happened to have property in our family. And so Jim purchased some more land. Anyway, we ended up in Maumelle and developed the villa at River Point Drive, which is just great. It's just going great. And so that's our Maumelle property. Mm-hmm. And then we found this gem of property, just perfect little diamond over here in the rough. And it turned out it wasn't in my family, but in my family's business. They had this little piece of property that changed the need for it. They weren't gonna use it in the way they needed to do, and so we bought it.
Yeah.
We all got together and we bought it, and we're sitting in it right now.
Yeah. Well, it used to not look like this.
No, it didn't. But there's about 40 acres here, and it's on the Arkansas River. And we knew that North Little Rock had a head of steam in development. I mean, it's really, really growing with Argenta and all the kind of good things going on.
Well, and next door is Rockwater. And we talk about, when we're on Esplanade on Air, we talk about the unique nature of this development, which we'll get to right now. But one of the other things is the curve of the river and the spot that you land when you come past the marina. You see the sign that takes you down the bike trail, boom, hit the Esplanade. And it just pops out of kind of nowhere. I mean, the skyline is beautiful behind it.
Well, it is. And we, at Rock River, it's just beautiful. And the marina is wonderful. And we thought, oh, how cool, And we, of course, communicate with them, and maybe, we can share amenities. We got the pool, they got the marina. And so, we like to work together with the city. Now we're in North Little Rock. Mm-hmm. And so between Blake Jackson and Edward Jackson, they both are involved with any kind of zoning, getting
permits and
all the permits, all the things that go with development. And so I don't have to do any of that. I just go to meetings. I want to know that, well, you did do that, and what are you going to do about that? And they put up with me as a investor, because they're real good natured. Even Blake,
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I find it interesting from the investor standpoint. We haven't really, a lot of my guests come on and I haven't met them yet, or they're new to the project or new to the podcast. And so I get to discover things as I go. And what I love about your background being in architecture is mine's in appraisal. So I spent 17 years as, I'm still licensed as an appraiser in Arkansas. I just don't practice anymore. But what I can tell you is, from that standpoint of an investor, is you want to see where your money's going, but you also want to see that they're improving the quality of life in the community, and you want the residents to be happy. And some of those things, when you've loved Arkansas as much as you have, you've lived here your whole life, you don't want it to be a development that turns out to be not a right fit for the community, or the residents are not satisfied with the quality or location of amenities, things like that. So what I love is, it seems like you get to kind of observe this forward-thinking, fun vision, and also, as they execute, kind of pick and choose where you want to consult.
So I'd say that's great. Yes, you hit it. We're also, it just happened, we're in an opportunity zone.
Such a good spot.
Which brings up the whole idea of improving the property, helping the community, and working together anyway, and being part of North Little Rock. So that's pretty exciting, and we all just learning along the way. And our neighbors at Rockwater, they know more about it than anybody. So they've really helped explain to us, well, what it is an opportunity zone. And so, anyway, there's several of them around the state. So that'd be a whole topic. You ought to, you'll learn more about that.
Oh, for sure. We were out here for the groundbreaking and saw everyone that came, and the governor came, and everybody was with their shovels and their little hats, and it was really great to see you all out there. But when you mentioned Lisa Farrell and Rockwater, that was another, development prior to the Esplanade that kind of set the stage for, this is what we're doing. We're going to draw a real fine line between luxury living like you would at a resort and being at home. And that's kind of, I think, what the Esplanade has hit when you walk in the door.
And you're right. And so it feels good. Watching all of the landscape be planted, the pool filled with water, at the end, everything winding up. And in the meanwhile, they're still leasing. I mean, it's already started back in May. And so we are here, we are available. I'm telling all my friends, and we are on the bike path. We are on the walking path and the path that goes all around the city of Little Rock. It is so, and North Little Rock. Anyway, it's so cool because people will probably be coming up here to get a drink or to get a sandwich. They'll be able to stop up here at one of our little locations on this property. And it's a container. It's going to be very cool.
Well, it's so funny that you should mention that, because giving way to other phases, I get so excited because Blake has me under like lock and key, right? So whenever anyone else comes and they can tell things about the development, that's super helpful to me. So, because I have to get permission, since I have the loudest mouth, I have to go to him and ask permission. But when you talk about these future phases, can we talk a little bit about mixed use development? Because I think that most people think about this kind of investment and their initial shut mind goes multifamily, and they don't really think about, wait, what else is possible? And Blake doesn't have that problem. It's like there's no barriers in his brain. So he just keeps mixing things into an apartment complex that perfectly fit but don't belong. Talk to me about that.
Well, we love the way he thinks, because Blake travels a lot, and when he bounces these ideas off of us, either we'll go, oh, that looks like a hotel. And he said, yes. I went, oh, is this good? And so
I don't know. Yeah, let's try it.
And we had to change a few things just because it costs a little more to do a hotel. So we got it down to more of, yes, I want to live there. I don't want to just visit. That kind of a feeling. And so that's what I think we've gotten. Besides, it's so cool. I mean, it looks great.
Well, the other part, when, just before we were kind of talking about the COVID situation and how it's been very difficult for people not knowing what their future holds with respect to their work. And when you have to work remotely, I mean, I'm just trying to say, if I have to work remotely and I can look out there and see this, I'm probably going to be okay with that.
It's very nice. It feels good. The amenities are very wonderful. I love the landscape, the color, and of course the location. But I mean, right now, you just have to be aware that life is changing until we get through this crazy pandemic.
Well, and that's what's part of, I guess, loving what you do, or loving where you live and living the dream like you can at the Esplanade, is that somebody came in here the other day that was leasing for corporate, and she was coming in finding corporate leases so that her employees could come and stay somewhere that they felt at home but also kind of felt like they were visiting.
Yes.
She walked by this studio and she goes, what is that? And I popped out and like, it's a podcast studio. If you want to come in here and create content or start a podcast and you live here, you can reserve time to do that. She was like, she looked at the leasing it. She was like, we're going to need a couple apartments. And it was one of those things that I just looked at her and I thought that was Blake's mind at work, because when we sat down to talk about this, he was like, what better place would there be if you could create content? Like, is that something that there's a demand for in Central Arkansas? And I'm like, yes. And we have this huge discussion about it, and it just opens up Pandora's box. People come up here to find out, how do I start a show? Can I live here and create content? And it was another amenity that sort of just came out of left field as far as other people are concerned, but then it has worked so well for people that have a need to create content or work from home.
Well, that is something new for us. That's just great. When you talked about the mixed use, I guess in all the architecture magazines and traveling that we've done, that's really, I mean, that's just sort of the best use, because it's like you have everything at your fingertips. I mean, we will hopefully have a high rise. We will have houses that you can rent, you could buy. You'll be able to eat, you'll be able to go shopping. And in the middle of it, everything will be very secure. Everything will be very safe. And so in the middle of all kind of things going on in our world, you can come home and feel good and then be safe going swimming, thinking you're at the beach because it's so cool outside. And you've got your apartment and it's everything you need in there. And the staff's wonderful. People are trying real hard because we're new, we're getting going here, but we have experience. I say we, me being sort of an onlooker in a way, because I'm not doing the drawings. We have excellent help with all of those kind of services. So.
Well, and a unique set of skills. I know that Blake's also an architect. And I know you and Jim are both architects as far as who you went, you started your architecture career with. Who else, as far as this partnership, is there more architects involved, or is it just a group of very different skills?
Well, right now we contract with Williams and Dean,
right.
And we went to school with Gary Dean, so it's almost like it's in the family.
School of thought, right.
Yeah, and so, but they help us with our working drawings and visions and details. So, but otherwise, I mean, you seem to be interviewing the different people that are involved, but we're really a small little group.
Yeah,
so,
it seems very tight knit, but it is family. So I mean, that kind of makes sense. And
it is.
Funny story, actually. I walked in here the other day, and Edward was here.
Yes.
And we locked eyes, and he's like, "Did I buy a house from you?" I'm like, "Yep." And he had bought a house from me like 4 years ago, before Blake and I had ever met. And it was just an interesting thing to run into him here. And I thought, small world.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I didn't know about that.
I'm friends with a couple of your kids. So
lots of contacts.
Well, and so moving on to some of the things that make you a unique piece of this business. You have done some things with a nonprofit in Arkansas, and I know it's separate from the Esplanade. You've done nonprofit direction. You have this background in architecture. You've raised 3 kids. Can you talk to me a little bit about the challenge of building community and building family? I mean, it doesn't look, it's not as easy as it looks. And I know because I have a little bit of experience, but you have a lot of experience. So talk to me about that.
Well, my children are all grown. And so I have grandchildren. It's all a matter of using your time and then constantly learning. So I'm not sure how to answer what you're asking. I mean, it's just my life. And, at my stage in life, I backed up from a lot of things because the charities could not operate with COVID. Like if you're talking about cultural kind of things I've been involved with, like our new Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts, like the rep, different kind of cultural activities that I like. And my family's always been involved with that. And then I work with people with disabilities, so this place is accessible.
Yeah, it is.
And there are things that we always need to do to be in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So Blake has to put up with that because I always, what about that width of that door, or where's the ramp, or things like that. And so
it's interesting that you said that, because when they showed me a couple of the model units, I was like, well, these door frames are awfully wide. Are these ADA compliant door frames? And they were like, yep. I was like, cool. So that is kind of cool. But so here's the thing though, when I ask that question, what I really kind of wonder is the challenge behind, and maybe right now you're a little bit more of an observer or kind of involved in more conversational piece, but at some point in your life, you were raising those kids while you were trying to do some of these huge projects and running a nonprofit. How did you surmount those kind of challenges to be able to, what helped you through that time in your life?
See, she's asking me this because of a 14-year-old, a 14-month-old, and a full-time work. And it is.
I've got you in a corner now, Missy.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. Mm-hmm. And so you just have to be focused and know what you want to do. And your priorities change all the time. All of a sudden, your child is your priority, mm-hmm. So I don't have an answer to it. You just live it.
Darn it.
But yeah, I have no answer. But how I spend my time now is mainly with my family and my projects, because I retired.
Yeah.
Yay!
Yay, you did it.
And so now I have a 10-month-old Labrador Retriever puppy. And so that has changed my husband's and my life. But fortunately, she is off receiving obedience training, or we would have had to get a babysitter for me to be here. Excuse me, a puppy sitter.
I just think that's so funny because my 14-month-old and my 14-year-old and your Labrador probably have the same attention span and the same level of obedience. I should have sent my kids with your dog.
Anyway, that's a whole new thing for me. Yeah. So I'm highly distractible right now, and I need to organize all kind of things. So coming to the Esplanade is calm, soothing. When everything is working well, it's all good. And I love to do this, and because I don't have to much do anything.
Well, and what you just said too about the dog reminded me that there is a dog park back here.
Oh yeah, we want to be accessible for dogs too.
They're pet friendly around here. And when I saw the decor and the marble floors and all the beautiful furniture, and then I'm like, they're pet friendly too. But it's because the staff, like you said, does such a great job. Everything's pristine all the time. But right now, as the landscaping comes out of the dog park and it develops, you kind of get to see more and more of the property sort of coming to life, and it's been really exciting about.
Well, we are brand new. I mean, we opened in May. It started leasing, and so every time I come, it's like, whoo, look at that. You know, it's exciting, and I love seeing our renters here, lessees.
Yep. When I pulled in today, they were standing on their balcony, a couple of people standing on their balcony looking at the scenery, and it was really cool to pull in and see people living here.
It is. So it's coming, you know, we'll fill up and it'll just be great. So right now, while we're filling up, we finally have income coming in. So that's good. So now we're working on phase 2. See, so we just go step after step and one builds on the other. And so it's coming.
Well, that was one of my next questions moving into other phases is I did selfishly ask everybody that's come on the show so far, except for Blake, because Blake would probably have too many to list. But I want to know everyone's favorite food or food item that they want to see in future phases, because you have so many different options. And with this kind of scenery, it's like, I mean, I'm thinking about tacos quite a bit, but I'm also thinking about like, I don't know, ice cream. I mean, so what would you say in the restaurant phase when we finally get to food and drink? What would you say your vote is?
You need to be sure and ask everybody that with knowing their different age range. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like I'm always on a diet. So it's like, well, let's see what Jack wants.
Smoothie bar.
Yeah. But you can't go wrong with something like a casual.
Yeah.
And I think everything should be casual, even though we have a beautiful, it's pretty luxurious here, but it's casual. It's comfortable.
Yeah.
That would be the term. And there'll be activities for people. And so, you know, what's your casual go-to food? I mean, it may be a filet, but it can be something easy, like, you know, like burgers and things like that. But whatever it is, it's going to be very good.
Yes, it will be.
And we'll, I'm sure, do a food feasibility study.
We'll do a feasibility study and find out what everyone's eating around here.
Or what you would like to eat.
Yes. Well, and I think that's interesting how much, and tell me about this too in partner meetings. Do you guys sit down and talk about like, I want to do this and I want to do that and create ideas together? Or does Blake sort of lead the vision and then come back to you guys with like a ping pong?
Well, it started, as you said. We'd all get together and figure out, well, what do we want to do? Like, we wanted to buy this property, so we all had to decide, because that was some money. And we named it. We have to get together with a name, so we have sort of an unusual name. It's the Arcopolis, which was the Native American name of Arkansas a long time ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Fun fact.
And so, but each thing that we do is like a separate legal entity.
Right.
And so, you know, we have excellent legal help and different people to guide us because we don't know all these things.
Well, and it's huge, the level of development you're doing now.
It's not, pretty big, yes.
Yeah, it's not that first, you know, move out of that house because it's being sold for a better, highest and best use. But
Yeah, we made mistakes along the way. Anything that wasn't really a mistake, but let's say we've learned and said, well, let's try it this way next time. And so I would say that Blake is a visionary, and he has so many ideas, and so we have different capacities, I guess, between my children and their spouses, and Blake listens to everything, and then we have the bank.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. That's a little over the top, Blake. Let's next time. Let's see how we do on this one. We have to keep our feet to the ground a little bit, because we don't want to price ourselves out of work. I mean,
right. Well, and the other part of it is, when you mention things like with the economic breakdown of how this goes, you have to have income to be able to incur the expense, and you have to build a development that people want to live, and that's going to stand the test of time. I mean, what's interesting about this development is, we've referenced COVID a couple times, because right now Arkansas's got some skyrocketing numbers with that, and people are beginning to work from home more often. And, as things start to change, if people are having to work and live at home, it's going to be nice to have the kind of luxury and the kind of amenities that they might not have ever been able to access in Arkansas before. And I say Arkansas, but in central Arkansas. I mean, I haven't seen another development like this in central Arkansas ever, except for the Villa. The Villa's pool is like ridiculous, but now the Esplanade's like, take it up a notch.
Well, that's nice. And it'll be nice to have an eatery, different kind of things to offer here. But again, we want people to use North Little Rock. We want access to Little Rock. We want access to the schools. We wanted that, and so we've designed that to make sure if you move here and you've got children, which many people do, and dogs, well, you got to have access to puppy care and access to child care. And so all of that's around. Got to find the bus, everything.
Your bike ride to Burns Park is right there.
And bike ride, my children are really onto e-bikes, and they are e-biking everywhere, electric bikes. And that's what my oldest son, Tyndall, who's a musician, I mean, all the musician venues had to close down during COVID, last year's COVID. And right now they're open. And so these are all the young people who are not vaccinated, not good. And so they're getting sick. So I'm sure that'll have to close down for a while. But in the meanwhile, he's rock and rolling at the moment because everything opened back up.
Well, we'll have to have him out here rock and roll because...
And he's bike riding, which was my point.
Yeah.
They had to figure out, well, what do we do? Because it can't work. And so, different people work at home, you figure out something to do, but when all of your venues close, then there just wasn't any work to go out and, well, there was some. You could play on Facebook. And,
could do like a live
and
video.
he can record. He has a recording studio. So there's some things, of course, that he could do. But he invested in electric bikes. And so his whole family, and they all ride everywhere. But anyway, that's handy here because we have a lot of bike traffic.
Well, that's one of the things that we actually are famous for in the area is our bike trails, our bike paths. That Burns Park is one of the most, it's one of the largest parks in the country. And it being right here. And then again, the intersection of 30 and 40 is right there, which is the most traveled intersection in the country. So there's just so much close by to make this exciting. The Travelers Stadium's not far down the road.
It's
Argenta
really
Art
nice.
District. It's pretty incredible.
It is.
I'm excited. And I've been waiting a minute to meet you. So I'm very grateful that you took the opportunity to come on this show without having met me before.
Thank you. I did get to see you in a podcast because I'm learning. And now, what is a podcast? Because I wasn't real familiar except through TED Talks, and then my friends who walk, and they said, "Oh, well, I listened to this on a podcast." So I am excited to learn about it and to learn about you and to see this cool little place that we're in, which is in the clubhouse of the Esplanade. That's very creative. Yes.
Yes, I think that was a great. No, thank you. I think it's an incredible idea, and I was so grateful, to have seen it come to fruition. But the best part is getting to share a podcast with you, and when this comes out, being for you to be able to see it and listen to it and kind of see what it does, it'll get the opportunity to share some of your incredible story with the community around you that may not have known you before. There's a whole generation of us who are in love with Arkansas that maybe I'm not from here. So I actually moved here 13 years ago, and in that time, I have fallen so in love with this place. There's no way I'd go anywhere else, and I spend my time pushing for it. And so
That's cool.
it's nice to meet a native who's built from the ground up here.
Yes. And stayed here, came back here.
And it's a working mother who can recognize my severe struggles at the moment.
Yes. And you don't know about my dog, but I think you recognize the struggle of having a hyper little something or other.
Well, and I'll go ahead and raise you one that my mother has a 10-month-old Great Dane that she picked up from the vet this morning because she had to have eye surgery. So these dogs, the other thing is they get expensive quick, huh? And you just don't see it coming until there's a big, huge, hairy expense in your lap.
That's right.
Well, what advice, I'm going to ask you one final question before I let you out of the hot seat here. As far as a piece of advice, if you had someone else coming and asking you, hey, I want to develop something. I want to take my money, I want to put it in a piece of land, and I want to make it operate on income. Would you advise them to jump straight into a multifamily new construction development? Would you say buy something and make it better? What kind of advice would you offer a first timer?
You need to learn about land. My dad always said land is the best thing, best investment, and just sit on it, just keep it. And so the initial idea wasn't to have any fast turnaround. And so when I grew up, I just knew, well, we had this property here and we had this property there, and I couldn't do anything about it. So now I'm doing something about it. Or later, of course, the property can stay in the family, and the value goes up, it goes down. Things change. And the whole community may move one direction and your property's over here. Or maybe you got luck of the draw and the community moved where you had your property. So if someone wants to develop, you got to think of what are you going to develop on? And where is that? And then I'm for using resources available. So I would talk to you, you're an appraiser, and I would talk to a feasibility specialist to help, look at the neighborhood. I want to see what works in a neighborhood. And you have to balance it. You have to think, okay, now that is needed. We need housing in this area. Now, what kind of housing do we need? Well, we have developments around here, like developments of apartments, but we also have neighborhoods. So, we need to fit in. So we don't put anybody out or do anything. We want to be available to whoever's around here. And so that you got to really look around. You have to really be thoughtful about that. And if you're lucky and you play your cards right, you might get an income out of it, because then you can sell it. But then you have to think, now what am I going to do with that money? If you get any money, well then that's a question. You have to think about that. And so you're going to put it back into a development? Are you going to give it all to Uncle Sam? You're going to give it to your children? You have to think, what if I did have some money? You have to think about a lot of these things. So I am constantly in a learning mode. And that's probably how I deal with my crazy life is I'm very agreeable and very optimistic. I just think things will work out. And they have. So,
well, you're living proof of starting with a good piece of land and learning constantly and being able to turn that into a career and a life.
That's right.
Congratulations on all of that.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate this.
Of course. Oh, it's been really nice to hear your story and kind of learn from a woman who has raised kids and businesses and then found the time to give back through nonprofits, which I think just from a mother's perspective, my son's 14 months old, and you just said, hey, my son just lost his hearing all of a sudden. He's 14 months old. And I'm thinking in my mind how hard that would be right now.
That's pretty hard.
Yeah. And to deal with it in the middle of trying to build a business and to try to keep my composure and go home and learn this and learn sign language. And do I need an implant? And what decision's right for my child? And I just admire you so much for doing that and building a business and being here to tell me about it. It's very inspiring and makes me also very grateful for, the lesser challenges I've faced so far.
Well, thank you. I think you're doing great.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm going to bring my kids to see you so that you can play with them because I think we could go sit by the pool and have fun.
That's right.
And then I'll leave you with the puppy and the babies. I'm just kidding. Hey, you have the experience. You can't blame me. She's like, no.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nan Ellen, for being here. And I'll go ahead and let you out of the hot seat because it looks like we're about to close the lobby for, it looks like a couple hours. We'll be closing the lobby. We'll be done with appointments. And I will see you, I guess, on site here soon, right?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm coming a lot.
Yeah.
I
Well,
bring my friends and we come and then we meet here, you know.
we can play cards in the lobby or out in the cabana if you guys want.
Who knows? But thank you, Jamie.
Well, thank you, Nan Ellen, for being here. And to our listeners, it's time for you to go off air and get some sleep. We'll catch you next time at the Esplanade. Live in the dream.
Thank you.